Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Today, we're diving into a powerful truth that many overlook when navigating breakups and reclaiming their self-worth. When you stop texting and calling a man, it's not just silence, it's a statement. It's a shift in energy, a move that can spark realization, regret, and even a complete change in how you're perceived. This isn't about games, it's about understanding your value and allowing space for someone to recognize it too. So if you've ever wondered what really happens when you finally stop chasing, this message is for you. Let's talk about what that silence truly says. Let's start with something simple but powerful. Your silence. You see, when you stop texting him, when you stop calling him, when you stop checking in or liking his stories, you're not just disappearing, you're speaking loudly. And the message you're sending is not anger, it's not bitterness, it's clarity. You're saying, I'm no longer available for what doesn't serve me. And that kind of statement hits harder than any long emotional message you could have written. Because what happens in the absence of noise is far more revealing than what happens when you're still trying to get a response. When you're constantly reaching out, you're doing the emotional labor for both people in the relationship. You're filling in the space, giving him assurance, feeding the bond, and unknowingly letting him become passive. But the moment you stop, the moment you remove yourself from that cycle, something shifts. And not just in you, in him. Suddenly, he's no longer in control of the pace. He's no longer the one who gets to decide when the next conversation happens. He realizes that the woman who was once so accessible, who once gave him her time, her attention, her heart, is now nowhere to be found. And let me tell you, that silence doesn't just echo, it roars. In the beginning, he may not react. He may even act unbothered, but don't be fooled by the calm surface. Inside, he's noticing. Your absence has weight. The very fact that you're not trying to fix, chase, or explain sends a message that hits his ego before it even touches his heart. And that's what he wasn't prepared for, because he was used to the pattern: text, response, call, comfort. But now, nothing. Now, the story has changed. And when he sits in that quiet, when he sees no notification from you, no sign that you're still emotionally available, that's when your voice becomes louder than it ever was. You see, silence doesn't beg, silence doesn't plead. It simply says, I value myself too much to keep showing up where I'm not being met. And trust me, that kind of energy can't be ignored. Whether it draws him closer or drives him away, it will force a reaction. It will bring out what's real. And that's exactly what you want. Because if a man doesn't miss you in the silence, if he doesn't feel the absence of what you brought into his life, then you've just saved yourself from more heartbreak. But if he does, that's when the real story begins. Your silence isn't empty. It's powerful. Let it speak. When you pull back your energy, when you stop initiating the calls, the texts, the constant checking in, what you're really doing is shifting the balance of power. And I don't mean power in a manipulative way. I'm talking about emotional power, the kind that determines whether you feel in control of your life or whether you're waiting on someone else to validate your worth. Because every time you reach out first, every time you send that good morning text hoping he'll respond, you're tipping the scale in his favor. You're putting the emotional momentum in his hands. And the truth is, as long as you're the one holding it all together, he doesn't have to. He gets to sit back and enjoy the attention, the affection, the security, all without putting in the same effort. But the moment you stop, the game changes. The shift doesn't happen because you're playing hard to get. It happens because you finally decide to stop giving more than you're receiving. And that single decision is incredibly powerful because now, instead of reacting to him, you're responding to yourself. You're listening to that part of you that's been quietly saying, I deserve more than this. And that's when he starts to feel it, the absence of effort, the loss of control, the change in your energy. And men notice that shift much faster than you think. It throws them off balance. He may not even understand why, but he'll sense that the dynamic has shifted, and he'll feel something he hasn't felt in a while: uncertainty. You see, most men aren't used to losing the emotional upper hand, especially when they've been comfortable, knowing that no matter how they show up or don't, you'll be there. But when you step back, it forces him to either step up or fall away. And both outcomes give you clarity. That shift of power isn't about making him chase. It's about making yourself the priority again. It's about realizing that your time, your attention, your love, it's not something you just hand over freely to someone who hasn't earned it. And once you embody that truth, you stop settling for breadcrumbs and start expecting the whole meal. When he feels you pull back, he may try to re-engage. He might test the waters with a casual message or a delayed response just to see if you're still there. But if your mindset has truly shifted, you won't be tempted to fall back into old patterns because now you understand your value. You're not chasing anymore, you're choosing. And that's the most powerful place to be. The moment you stop overgiving is the moment you start being seen. Let that shift happen. Let it unfold, because that's where everything begins to change. When you stop calling and texting, his mind doesn't stay quiet. In fact, that's when it starts racing. That's when curiosity kicks in, followed quickly by confusion. He starts asking questions, not to you, but to himself. Why did she stop? Did something happen? Is she upset? Has she moved on? And those questions come like a wave, especially when he's gotten used to you always being the one to reach out first. We often underestimate just how much someone notices a pattern until it changes. When you are consistently showing up, sending sweet messages, checking in, keeping the connection alive, he may not have expressed appreciation, but don't make the mistake of thinking he didn't notice. He noticed. And that steady flow of attention became his comfort zone. So when you stop, that comfort disappears. Suddenly, the predictability is gone, and in its place is silence. That silence creates a vacuum, and our human nature hates empty space. So he fills that space with thoughts, scenarios, assumptions, even paranoia. And here's where it gets interesting. Now you're on his mind, not because of what you said, but because of what you didn't say. That's the part that eats at him. The message you didn't send, the reply you didn't give, the call that never came. That's when he starts wondering if you've emotionally checked out. And that question alone is often more powerful than any declaration of love. Men aren't used to sitting in emotional discomfort, especially when they've grown used to a woman's constant reassurance. So when that reassurance disappears, it creates a kind of discomfort that they can't ignore. And instead of leaning back and assuming you're still there, they start to lean forward. Mentally at first, then emotionally, not always visibly, not always with a grand gesture, but internally, he starts to feel the shift. And that inner tug is what wakes him up. He may not react immediately. In fact, you might not see any reaction at all in the beginning. But don't confuse silence with indifference. Sometimes the loudest response is no response at all, because it means he's thinking, he's processing, he's wondering what changed, and more importantly, he's wondering if you're done. The irony is, when you were always available, he had the luxury of taking his time, of being lukewarm, of keeping you at arm's length. But now he doesn't know where he stands. And that's the kind of confusion that shakes a man into clarity, because it's in your absence that he begins to realize the weight of your presence. It's when your voice goes quiet that your values start speaking the loudest. And that's when you know you've made the right move, when your silence turns into the one thing he can't stop thinking about. At some point, after you've gone silent, he's going to test the waters. It's almost inevitable. He'll throw something out there, a casual, hey, a meme, a song you once listened to together, or even just a reaction to your story. It'll seem harmless, light, innocent, but don't be fooled. It's a test. He's trying to gauge if you're still emotionally available, if you'll still respond the way you used to, if the door is still cracked open, even just a little. And this is where your strength will be challenged. Because in that moment, your heart might jump. You might feel that rush of excitement, that flicker of hope that maybe this is the turning point. Maybe now he's realizing what he lost. But you have to take a breath, because your reaction to that little breadcrumb will define whether you stay grounded in your self-worth or fall back into old cycles. See, when he reaches out, he's not necessarily ready to give more. He's not always coming from a place of clarity or commitment. Sometimes he's just trying to see if he still has access to you. And if you respond too quickly, too warmly, too eagerly, he gets his answer. He learns that he doesn't have to show up differently to keep you emotionally tethered. That even after pulling away, even after giving you inconsistency, he can still snap his fingers and you'll be right there. But if you stay grounded, if you don't rush to respond, or better yet, if you don't respond at all, you're sending a message that's far more powerful than words. You're saying, my peace is not up for negotiation. My energy is not available to someone who's unsure. And that changes everything. This doesn't mean you're being cold or petty. It means you've raised your standards. It means you're no longer impressed by crumbs because you've realized you deserve the full meal. And in doing so, you put the responsibility back where it belongs, on him. If he wants you in his life, he has to come correct. No more vague messages, no more last-minute attention. You're not playing in the gray area anymore. What often happens next is telling. If he was serious, he'll escalate. He'll go beyond a text. He'll show effort, consistency, vulnerability. But if he was only looking for reassurance or a quick ego boost, he'll retreat. He'll disappear just as quickly as he popped up. And as painful as that might be, it's a gift because it gives you clarity. It saves you from wasting more time on someone who was never truly ready to meet you at your level. Remember, a test is only effective if you let it define your behavior. So when he reaches out, don't lose yourself in the fantasy of what could be. Stay rooted in what is. Because when you hold your ground, you hold your value. And that's when everything starts to shift in your favor. When you stop reaching out, when you truly step back and let the silence settle, something interesting begins to happen. All the noise that used to fill his head, all the distractions, the convenience of knowing you were always there, it fades. And what's left is just him, sitting alone with his thoughts. That's where your energy, constantly keeping the connection alive, he's finally left to face what he actually feels. No more comfort blanket, no more excuses, just raw, unfiltered emotion. For a man who was used to you always being there, always initiating, always showing love no matter how little he gave back, your absence is jarring. And in that quiet, he starts to realize how much of the relationship was fueled by your effort. That's when the internal dialogue begins. Was she really that important to me? Did I actually take her for granted? Why does it feel so empty without her? Those questions aren't asked when you're texting him every morning or calling just to check in. They only rise up when the silence forces him to confront the truth. You see, some men don't fully understand what they had until they feel the vacuum of it. They don't reflect while you're giving them everything. They reflect when you've taken your energy away. And that reflection, that's the moment their real feelings come to the surface. If he cared deeply, if he felt a genuine connection, if there was something real there, he's going to feel it now. He's going to miss not just the messages, but the meaning behind them. He's going to miss the way you made him feel, the support you gave, the lightness you brought to his life. And he's going to realize that wasn't just attention, that was love. That was someone who truly showed up. But if there's nothing there, if his feelings were never strong or serious, then silence becomes a filter. He won't feel much. He may even move on quickly. And as painful as that is to see, it's also a blessing because it shows you exactly where he stands without you having to beg for clarity, without having to drag the truth out of someone who doesn't want to give it. His reaction, or lack of one, speaks volumes. That's why stepping back is never about games. It's about exposing the reality of the connection. And that reality will either rise to meet you or fall away. But either way, you win. Because now you're not living in the gray. You're not guessing, wondering, hoping. You're seeing things clearly. And that clarity, even when it hurts, is what sets you free. If he truly cares, the silence won't push him away. It will pull him closer. But if it doesn't, then the silence did exactly what it was meant to do. It revealed the truth. When you stop calling, when you stop texting, when you stop showing up the way you used to, it might seem like you're doing nothing, but in reality, you're doing something incredibly powerful. You're reinforcing your worth without saying a single word. You're showing that your love isn't free just because you feel something, that your energy isn't owed just because someone used to have access to it. And that's not pride talking, that's self-respect. That's the voice of someone who's realized that their presence is a gift, not a guarantee. We live in a world where constant communication is expected. We're made to feel like if we don't respond quickly, if we don't chase what we want, we'll lose it. But what you're doing when you pull back is reminding him and reminding yourself that you don't need to chase someone who isn't meeting you where you are. That your silence isn't punishment, it's a boundary. It's you saying, I know who I am, I know what I bring, and if you can't see it, then you don't deserve access to it. Every time you resist the urge to reach out, you're drawing a line in the sand. You're saying, I'm not going to hand over my emotions to someone who's not willing to invest equally. And trust me, that does something. It hits different, especially to a man who thought you'd always be there. Because what once felt guaranteed is now uncertain. What once felt safe now feels distant. And that distance, that's where the shift begins. He may not admit it, but he'll feel it. And more importantly, he'll start questioning himself. Why isn't she chasing? Why has she gone quiet? What does she know that I don't? And that questioning, that discomfort, is often the first step to him realizing what he actually feels. Because the absence of effort on your part forces him to evaluate whether he's really okay losing you. And that evaluation, that's not triggered by your words, it's triggered by your absence. You see, when a woman pulls back and still stands tall, when she doesn't beg, doesn't plead, doesn't try to convince him of her worth. That's unforgettable, because now you're not just another woman chasing a man. You're the woman who knew her value enough to walk away when she wasn't being seen. And that image, it sticks. Whether he says it or not, it lingers. It challenges him to either rise to the standard you've set or remove himself completely. And either way, it gives you your answer. Because at the end of the day, you don't need to prove your worth. You just need to stand in it. And when you do, the right man won't just notice, he'll act. And the wrong one, he'll fade. Let him.